Today we'll be dealing with the topical questions from chapter 1 itself, but today I'll be focusing on opportunity cost. Now, many questions in your CIE paper 1 comes from opportunity cost, and there are few types of opportunity cost questions which you need to identify. Once you identify these types of topical questions from opportunity cost, it becomes very easier for you all to solve any questions that is given, right? So now let's move on to the very first question, which is the diagram shows a change in the economy's production possibility curve as it grows in the long run. Which movement from X is most likely to show the highest potential for growth? Now you need to understand here that it says here from point X, right? So this point X is your basic initial point. Now D cannot be your answer. Why? Because D is moving along the same PPC curve. Now you need to understand here that when a point moves in the same PPC curve, it is actual growth. So D is not at all your answer. Because question says your potential for growth, which means it's talking about potential growth. So you have to look towards something where the PPC is shifting. Now, if we talk about A, A has less of capital goods, but more of consumer goods. So we cannot really say it is highest potential growth because one is decreasing, another is increasing, isn't it? So now let's draw lines for option B as well. For option B, it seems like the capital goods is same as that for option X, like the point X and point B has same capital goods, but consumer goods is greater for point B than for point X. This is still dicey. Let's check for the other options. If we look at option C, capital goods is more than that of X, obviously, and your consumer good is also more than that of X, because if you draw the line, it's a little bit above point X. So we derive that for both goods, consumer goods, as well as for your capital goods, point C has the highest potential for growth. So in this type of opportunity cost question where PPC is given and it's asking you for potential for growth, you need to understand the difference between actual growth and potential growth at the first place. And the second place, draw lines for each of these points. Points A, point B, point D. So when you draw lines, it becomes very easier for you to compare the goods because numerically data is not given here. You don't know by how much. But qualitatively, you can look there and you can analyze whether it's increasing or whether it's decreasing, which makes you a very logical and rational thinker, and it helps you to solve such kinds of MCQ easily. So don't hesitate to draw lines. It's better if you use scales. However, freehand drawing also works because you just have to be tentatively guessing whether it's increasing or decreasing. Accurate measurement, not really needed. So don't even use scale and waste your time. If you do it, well and good. Now, let's move towards our next question, which is XY is the production possibility curve PPC of a firm that produces desks and chairs. What are the opportunity costs of the fourth and fifth desks produced by the firm? Now, these types of questions are very, very confusing. Even I got confused in my very first try, but you need to understand the trick that lies behind here. Now, if you look at the question carefully and if you read it carefully once, twice, thrice, there's something different that you will notice from all the other types of opportunity cost questions, which is the term fourth and fifth. Fourth and fifth indicates here what? It indicates additional units. So whenever in these types of MCQ relating with opportunity cost, it asks you for an additional growth like fourth, fifth, or if it even mentions about additional unit of chair or additional unit of desk, there is a different approach that you need to follow. All right. So now let's see fourth desk, right? Fourth means you will have how much chair? You'll have 3 units of chair, 3 outputs of chair. And fifth means you'll have 0 output of chair. Now, since we're talking about fourth and fifth, we're talking about additional units. Additional units, whenever we talk about additional units, you need to take into consideration the previous units as well. So if we see for 3 desk, how many chair was there? There was 4 chair, right? Now, Additional meaning, it's 3 to 4. So you will also look at the chair from 3 to 4. Corresponding to 3 was 4 and corresponding to 4 was 3. Like 4 desk, 3 chair, 3 desk, 4 chair. Listen very carefully, all right? So this increase was 1, and how much it resulted here? 1. The difference between 4 and 3 is 1. Why are we doing this? We're doing this because we're talking about additional unit, means an extra unit generated. So we look and compare with the previous unit as well, because it's all about additional unit. All right. Now, if we look at the fifth output of desk, what is the chair output of the chair? It's 0, right? Now, as we know, we're talking about fifth, we're talking about an additional. So we look towards the previous one as well. So when you look at the fourth unit of desk, what was the unit of chair? It was 3. So for your fifth unit of desk, the opportunity cost is 0 minus 3 or 3 minus 0, whatever you call it. So it is 3 chairs. So correct answer for this is option A. Now, if you follow the old strategy or old rule, like which we follow usually on opportunity types of questions, which will come after in this video as well. By the end of the video, you can address such questions. But then whenever you look at such type of opportunity cost questions, normal way of doing, many students choose option B, right? This is the most confusing option, because what they do is they look at, okay, fourth desk, fourth gives 3. Now, what is the opportunity cost? Means opportunity cost is the second best alternative that you forgot, that you have to let go of, right? So what unit of chair you couldn't produce? You couldn't produce 2 units of chair, so 2 units of chair. Similarly, if you look at 5 desk, what are you unable to produce? You're unable to produce 5 chair, so opportunity cost becomes 5 and option B. But no, that's not the case. We are here talking about additional unit, fourth and fifth. It denotes additional, or whenever in any other question additional, the term itself is also mentioned, you need to follow this approach. It's very simple. Let me derive this into step. Step number 1, you decode the question fourth, fifth, so you understand that it is additional unit question. Step number 2, you draw lines. Here the line was drawn, however I highlighted so that it could be clear for you all. Same way, similarly in exam also you highlighted with the help of pencil, because in rush you can misread the numbers. All right. Secondly, highlight the lines and draw the lines. And thirdly, draw the line for the previous output as well, so that you can compare and you can take out the differences. And that difference is going to be your opportunity cost, right? This might be quite complex for you to understand. So you can rewind and watch again and listen again, but you need to master this concept. Now, whenever such type of question, fourth, fifth, or even let's say if they give you any additional unit questions, you can easily answer those questions with this concept. Let's move towards the next question. The diagram shows the production possibility curve and economy that is producing at point P. Which quantity of Y is given up to produce the quantity of X shown? Now, this was exactly the traditional type of question that I was talking about. These are the mostly fun opportunity cost types question. So this is very simple. Now, quantity of good X shown. So first of all, understand the question about which good it is talking about, good X or Y. X. So X 100 means it is here. Now trace this line along here so that it gives you clear reading. Point P and point over here. So now you need to understand this interval. It is not given, but I believe that you are smart enough to decode this interval. So if there is 100, if there is 50, so what must be, probably must be the interval? It is 110, 120, 130, 140, and 150. Now, how do you know these types of interval? It's like you need to be rational. You need to see it starts from 0 and it goes here 50. So it probably must be 10, 20, 30, 40. It will not give you that complex interval like you get in physics, your P3. It's not that complex, just simple number line. So you need to, I believe that maths will teach you this simple number line. So this is 110. Let me write here for your convenience. The point over here is 110. Now, for good x, the good y that you produce is 110. But here is we are talking about the quantity of y given up. So, what is the quantity of y given up? What is the maximum quantity of y that you can produce? That is 150. And what do you actually produce at point B? 110. So what quantity did you give up is exactly its difference. So 150 minus 110 will give you 40, and this is the quantity of good that you gave up to produce the good at point B. So 40 is option A, and option A is your answer. Now, these types of questions are also very easy. You just need to understand, firstly, you need to understand which good it is, good X or Y. If you decode that, it's very easy. Then you count the good Y, whatever is given. Sometimes, if you're lucky enough, interval is given, or else you find out the interval. That's not a difficult job. It can easily be done. Then you find out the maximum unit of good Y that can be produced. Then you subtract the maximum from the currently produced amount or unit of good. And that difference will give you the opportunity cost or the unit that is given up. So this is also very simple. Just read the question and understand what it is asking. Now let's go towards the next question. This is also very similar to the one that we just did, right? The diagram shows the production possibility curve for an economy that produces only two goods, X and Y. Economy produces 2 of 100 of good X. Good X. So we identified which good it was, good X, and operates on its production possibility curve. Which quantity of good Y is given up? Same type of question, just different numbering. Now, as I told you earlier, you need not be any ace mathematician to understand this number line. You can easily decode the interval. So this is 1000. So this must probably be 1100, 1200, 1300, 1400, 1500. That makes the perfect interval. You should look from 0 because 0, 100, 200, 300, 400, 500. Normally, if we decode one interval gap, it's the same throughout the number line. So 1100, 1200, this is a portion. Now I want this line to be quite straight because in the previous question, dotted lines were given. So it was quite easier to trace. You not need any scale. But here, a straight line is not given. So you need to use scale. And let me bring a straight line so that we'll not have any problem when we find out the number line in good Y as well, because we need to be careful with calculations. A slight mistake can bring a lot of difference in your answer. So this was at 1200, which is quite here. Now I need one more line to trace good Y. And this is exactly from here. And if you extend here, roughly it is around 400. Now, if you ask me how did I decode this interval, it's similar. Just you don't need to do for this. Like if we're smart enough, you will realize 0, 500, 0, 500. So it's probably the same interval that is for good X. So 100, 200, 300, 400. This is the point that you're currently producing in. How do we know that? Because 1200 units of good X is given. We found out 1200 unit on X-axis, or that is good X. We drew a straight line. Then we compared it with good Y. We decoded the interval lines on good Y. We made a straight line and we found out that it was actually 400. Now, what question asks what quantity of good Y is given up? Same approach. What is the maximum unit of good produced here? 1000. What is the unit of good Y that we actually produce? 400. So what is the difference between 1000 and 400? Simple mathematical calculation, that is 600. So 600 is your answer, right? This was no different from the previous question, just that you need to be a little careful when you trace 1200, when you find the interval, and when you find the corresponding unit of good Y of the very same unit of good X. Because earlier in this question, a dotted line was given, which was very easy for you to trace it. But here it becomes a little difficult, but it's not so difficult. You can easily solve these kinds of questions as well. Now, these kind of questions are very similar to the two before that we did. But the difference here is we're not dealing with numbers here. We're dealing with letters here. So that might make it quite complicated for you. However, it is not at all complicated. So the question is, the production possibility curve and economy producing capital goods and consumer goods is represented by the line PQ. All right. What is the opportunity cost of producing OS units of consumer goods? Now this is your OS unit of consumer good. Same thing, opportunity cost, or you say given up, right? Both of them is the same approach that you follow. So OS means what is currently being produced for capital goods. It's OR. And what is the maximum capital goods that you can produce? It is OP. So what unit is given up, or what unit you are unable to produce? You are unable to produce PR units of capital goods. So what is your answer? Your answer is PR units of capital goods. You don't have to look other options as well. Why OR is not the answer? OR is not the answer because OR is the current unit of capital goods that you are currently consuming. So it's not your answer. Now, if you look to option C, consumer goods, this can definitely not be your answer because consumer goods, it's asking for consumer goods. So your opportunity cost is definitely somewhat for capital goods, right? So you cross the answer immediately. Now, option D, SQ of consumer goods plus PR of capital goods. This is also not the answer because consumer goods shall nowhere be present. It's all about capital goods. So option B is the answer. Same thing. These three questions are same. Just that a slight changes is brought in every form of question. And once you understand the concept of solving these types of questions, any small changes that these CIE bring will not affect much.